very important webinar. Before we proceed to the introduction and objective of this session, I would like my colleagues, the facilitators, to introduce themselves. Let me start with Margaret.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maget Njai, and hold on. Yes. My name is Maget Njai, and I'm the Preparedness and Resilience Partnership Specialist based in IMOPS in Geneva. Thank you.
Brioni.
Thanks, Antonio. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brioni Stevens, and I am the Coordination Help Desk on the GNC CT. Thank you.
Magnat.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Magnat Kavuna. I'm one of the GNC RRT IM. I'm home based in Canada. Over.
Thank you so much. And also we have Shabib, who is also supporting us and making sure that the technology is working. My name is Antena Dobamo. I am the team leader for GNC Operational Support Team. Before I take you to the introduction of the webinar, I would like everyone to register your name in the form which Shabib has put in the chat box. Shabib, did we put the registration form?
Yes, I just put it.
Please, all participants, please get registered at in the form which is available at the chat box. So thank you again. In today's session, we will be covering three main topics, followed by some next steps. So first, we start with the overview of the emergency preparedness approach in general, and also specifically on the emergency response preparedness approach. So we spend about 15 minutes on that topic, and Margaret will give us the general overview. And followed by that, Brioni will take us through to the step-by-step process on the emergency response preparedness approach. She will be covering the specific areas of risk analysis, contingency planning, and she will also be talking about the preparedness actions and the monitoring that need to be done within the ERP process. Immediately after that, Margaret will take you through the ERP online platform, which GNC has developed. It's in the process of being developed right now, but he will take you through what the templates look like and the final output of the ERP online tool will look like. And then followed by that, Brioni will discuss about what would be done immediately after this webinar. This webinar is an introductory part of the whole ERP work we will be doing during the course of this year. So she will give you an idea what the next steps will look like, the rollout, and the support available from the GNC. And of course, we will also give some time for Q&A. And during the session, as much as possible, we try to make the session as interactive as possible. There will be some polls. So hopefully that would help you also to gauge your level of understanding of the ERP. And if you have questions, please post the question at the chat box. As much as possible, I try to monitor those questions, and I will ask the facilitators to respond. Yeah, so in general, it will take us, I think, about 90 minutes, and we hope to cover everything during the 90 minutes. So before you proceed to the main session, I think it would be important why we are having this webinar, and also why we are planning to do a rollout of emergency preparedness plan. So as most of you know, in most of the countries, the preparedness exercise is not really done on a written basis, and most of the time it is done on ad hoc basis. Although we know that ERP, emergency response preparedness, is a very compulsory and important component of the humanitarian programming cycle, but in reality, what we see is not every country puts the preparedness mechanism in place. And in our assessment, we did cluster coordination performance monitoring surveys last year and also before that. It has shown that most countries do not have the preparedness mechanism in place, and those who have prepared some kind of preparedness activity in the countries is not really comprehensive, and it doesn't really follow the proper standard of preparedness mechanism. So we want to make sure that there is improvement in the preparedness mechanism across all countries. So by the end of this session, we hope you will gain a better understanding of the preparedness mechanism, the different approaches, and also you will get to know the 2021, the GNC ERP exercise, what the rollout plan will look like, and also the time frame. And also, as I said, we will like also to show you what the final output of the emergency preparedness mechanism that we want to roll out during this 2021. Of course, as usual, these webinars are followed by support, one-on-one support to countries. So Brioni will talk about the next steps, and I hope it will give you an idea where we will be going during the course of the year. So with that, I will hand it over to Margaret for the overview on emergency preparedness approach.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Anthony. Shall I start?
Yes, you can start, Margaret.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Interagency Standing Committee Emergency Response Preparedness Approach that was developed in 2015 with all IASC members, partners. So emergency plans and systems have been developed to really improve the international humanitarian system response and enable the application of a proactive approach to emergency preparedness. I would ask if we can start with a quick poll on the different plans and tools that you have used in your context and of use to you. I think we can have 1 minute or 2 minutes for this. It's a quick one. Hello, Shabib. Okay. Can we go through the results if ready?
Hi, Shabib. Are you able to support with viewing the results of the poll?
Yes, I just click, but let us see.
It's available in the chat box, I think. People can see it. I can see it.
Okay, so perhaps we just can talk through it.
Okay. So let me just go through it quickly. So we have option 5 that dominates, which is the nutrition cluster sector preparedness plans. And then option 3, UNICEF preparedness plan with 25%, which follows closely. And then the intercluster with 20%. Okay, thank you. Can anyone tell me how in the intercluster the ERP is coordinated? Is there a role for the government, and especially if there are interactions with other processes? Just briefly, please.
Can I?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, this is Amani from the state of Palestine. Actually, we do have the cluster, the health cluster, and the nutrition is a sub group under the health cluster. But also we have protection cluster, we have wash cluster, we have food cluster, and each cluster have their own preparations. And then all these preparations, they are collected by the OCHA here in state of Palestine, and they are put together. But actually, there isn't like an inter-cluster discussion in between. Just like we have each cluster alone do it, but also there is an involvement from the government. Like when we have the cluster preparedness plan, we have Minister of Health engaged in this exercise. And I think in other sectors like in food, the agricultural ministry is engaged as well. This is like what happened in the state of Palestine. Thank you.
Hello, I was about to speak, but I think colleague was speaking, and then I thought maybe she should not interfere.
Okay, please go ahead.
Great. So the experience here in Yemen is that we have the intercluster, emergency, response preparedness. This is normally coordinated by OCHA. Of course, the scenarios are developed and the locations, and then we input. Each cluster, of course, prepares its respective, input into that, and mainly is about supply prepositioning, and very few in terms of capacity building and others. Now, the government in this case is normally completely not involved. It's basically the UN and the NGO. Of course, the context here may be different from other countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe this is what I can share.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. So in brief, emergency preparedness can be conducted at various levels, involving different actors. at humanitarian level, for example, for current HPC countries or countries which are very at high risk of emergency, the ERP is generally coordinated by OCHA, humanitarian coordinator, and the humanitarian country teams. And like the HNO and HRP process, each cluster is to contribute towards the process and have their own unique role. While we have the IASC ERP, which is led by OCHA, the government definitely should be involved throughout the process, both at inter-cluster and at the cluster level. We also have UNICEF preparedness plans, and UNICEF has developed an online tool which is widely known as EPP, Emergency Preparedness Platform, in which each country offices is expected to really collect information and at the country level and share this information throughout this EPP platform. And you also have at the government level various emergency preparedness approaches depending on the preferred approach by the respective government, and mainly also on this is decided based on the risk level. For example, in Bangladesh, UNICEF supported Bangladesh to develop an emergency preparedness response plan focused on identifying current gaps, capacities, and pre-positioning supplies. So I could summarize by saying that while the ERP approach is also applicable to clusters, we are mainly required to be mindful of donor preferred or required approaches. For example, we have ECHO, Directorate General of ECHO, which has just finalized the new guidance on disaster preparedness. And this guidance is applicable to DG ECHO funded projects. So if you want some funds coming from ECHO, so we should be very familiar with the disaster preparedness approach. But this disaster preparedness approach is not really different from the ERP. It's more or less aligned with the ERP, and both of them are very synergistic. So let's go through the ERP main approach now. Next slide, please. Next slide, Antene.
It's already on.
What is the ERP approach? The Interagency Standing Committee Emergency Response Preparedness Approach enables the humanitarian community to be proactively prepared for crises requiring a coordinated international response. The ERP focuses on situations in which the scale of emergency requires the concerted action of a number of agencies. It also focuses narrowly on the response side of the preparedness. And the aim of the ERP approach is to increase the speed and the volume of life-saving assistance delivered in the first 4 to 6 weeks of an emergency. The ERP approach is not an isolated approach. It is very much linked with other processes, like the HPC, Humanitarian Programming Cycle. Preparedness is part of the humanitarian programming cycle, like the PPRE, a preparedness package for refugees in emergency contexts. The PPRE and ERP were developed in parallel, and they take the similar approach to preparedness. The ERP is also linked with the international health regulation developed by WHO. In this context, the ERP will guide the preparedness for the management of potential humanitarian relief requirements arising within this crisis. And we also have the ERP, which is linked to longer-term risk reduction program, working to reduce the likelihood and impact of disasters. This will definitely increase the community's resilience to shocks, which are crucial. And this will help also to reduce the human cost of disasters. And in this context, I will just refer to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction that was adopted in 2015. And I think most of you have heard of this international framework. And to the CADRI partnership, which is the Capacity for Disaster Reduction Initiative, which is a partnership of 20 UN agencies, NGOs, international NGOs, civil society organization as well, aiming at supporting national government to develop coherent national disaster risk reduction action plans. So the ERP has, it's a continuous approach, which could be divided into 3 key elements. The first step of the ERP is to undertake a risk analysis to establish the level of humanitarian risk the country faces. The overall process of the risk analysis and monitoring can be broken into 5 steps, which are hazard identification, risk ranking, risk analysis, risk monitoring, leading to decision-making process. The second step is it's a step-by-step process that would lead to a contingency plan if the country is considered as being between medium and high risk. Then the contingency plan is a snapshot of humanitarian partners' capacities and approaches to meet the immediate needs of affected communities during the first 4 to 6 weeks of an emergency. And finally, you have what we call globally the preparedness actions, which include minimum preparedness actions and advanced preparedness actions. And the application of this preparedness action will depend on the access risk the country faces. Country team will either implement MPAs or a basket of MPAs and APAs if they are considered between medium and high risks. The definition of an MPA, it's a minimum preparedness action, which is a set of activities that must be implemented in order to establish a minimum level of emergency response readiness within a country. While the APAs, they are designed to really advance the HCT readiness to respond to specific risk that could really need to be filling some gaps in readiness during the contingency planning process. So these are the 3 key elements of the ERP process. So in general, next slide. In general, the ERP approach was first developed in 2015. And after 2 to 3 years of field testing, it was revised in 2018 to better reflect changes in the operating environment, such as localization, grand bargain, UN development reform. I would conclude by saying that, in short, the IASC ERP guidance provides detailed information on the 3 elements of the ERP approach and provide tools to understand risk and establish a system to monitor them. So you will see in the next presentation how to really use the risk scale to and then monitor the risk. We'll have to establish a minimum level of preparedness and take additional actions, including developing contingency plan to ensure readiness to respond to identify risks. So that's, in short, a quick overview on the IASC ERP approach. So I'm ready for any question you might have. Let's start with, yes, let's do this poll then. You should indicate which statements are true. The preparedness is part of the humanitarian programming cycle. The ERP approach aims to improve. The ERP approach aims to improve the speed and efficiency of the first four to 6 weeks of an emergency response. The ERP approach is applicable to UNICEF-led clusters only. So we can have 1 or 2 minutes just to respond to this poll. Thank you. Thanks. We have 25 votes. So looking at the results of this poll.
Yes, it is shared with them directly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's fine then. For the first statement, preparedness is part of the humanitarian programming cycle. Yes. Preparedness is fully part of the HPC. The second statement, the ERP approach aims to improve the speed and efficiency of the first 4 to 6 weeks of an emergency response. Yes, I said it earlier. And the third statement, the ERP approach is applicable to UNICEF-led clusters only. No. ERP approach is applicable to slow onset, to low to medium risk countries. So thank you. I think we have gone through the IASC ERP approach. I'm ready for any question. We can take some quick question before proceeding to the next presentation, which will give you more detailed information on how to apply the preparedness in the nutrition sector. Thank you, and over to you for any question you may have.
Thanks, Margaret. Participants, you can post your question at the chat box, and we could also take maybe one or two live questions. If anyone has a question, please unmute yourself and you can ask directly.
So my question is, the ERP approach is for high and medium level risk country, right? Is it so?
I said earlier that the ERP approach is flexible and is applicable to low risk countries, medium risk, and high risk countries. In that sense, you should select the preparedness action that you need to apply. If it's in a low risk country, then you could just select the MPAs. And there is a checklist, by the way, that we have developed for MPAs and APAs. And if it's a low risk country, you can apply the MPAs, which are not risk specific. While moving to a medium to high risk countries, that you apply a basket of MPAs and APAs that will help you to really be more proactive in the response. Next question, please.
Thank you.
Andrea, you want to ask a question? If not, then Andrea, you want to ask? Okay, if not, I think we can move to the next session, the next part of this webinar. It will be Brioni. Brioni, over to you. Margaret, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antenna, and thank you, Margaret, for presenting that first set of slides. So we have now reached the second part of today's webinar, and this will discuss the IASC ERP approach at a nutrition cluster or sector level. Just to flag, I do use the terms nutrition cluster and nutrition sector interchangeably. But when using either term, I am referring to an active nutrition coordination mechanism. So as we know, in the context we all work within, the situation can change at any time. And therefore, it is essential that we are adequately prepared to respond to various emergency scenarios in the various contexts we work within. So you may be asking yourself why the GNC is prioritizing emergency preparedness both at a global and country level. Well, this is, at a global level, the GNC identified through the 2020 CCPM exercise in which 21 countries contributed towards, and thank you to all the countries that did participate in this exercise, and through other means such as discussion with various country level coordination teams, that efforts were required to better prepare for emergencies, particularly as emergencies are increasing in frequency, magnitude, and duration due to various vulnerabilities. So to address this need, the GNC made emergency preparedness a global level GNC operational support team priority for 2021. And the following set of slides will discuss the GNC 2021 ERP exercise process overview, including the projected timeline, the three components of ERP in the context of the nutrition cluster or sector, the next steps by country level coordination teams, and also the support provided and also available by the GNC. And just before moving on to the next slide as well, just a reminder to those that have joined the call, if you can just complete the registration details, there should be a form available to you, which will ask you just a few questions so that we can have the details of everyone that was able to join today's call. So this slide here, this illustrates the 3 steps of the GNC ERP process overview. So under each of these steps is a series of actions which are detailed in a more comprehensive ERP process outline, which will be shared with you in the follow-up email following this webinar. But in summary, step 1 refers to the development and dissemination of ERP guidance by the GNC to country-level coordination mechanisms and teams. So examples of guidance includes today's webinar and the online GNC ERP tool, which will support you with generating the ERP plans, creating visual ERP dashboards, as well as mapping all ERP related outputs globally. And Magnet will walk you through this online tool later in the webinar. So step 2 refers to the first phase of the development of country-level ERP plans by countries with large-scale humanitarian emergencies. So 7 countries have been pre-selected for phase 1 of the rollout plan and have been bilaterally contacted by the GNC and invited to participate in this first phase of the rollout plan. That said, we would also like to take this opportunity to invite others on today's webinar to participate in phase 1, if you would like. If you are indeed interested, you are most welcome to express your interest with the GNC team, and you can reach out to Antenna to discuss this. But just to flag, we do have capacity just to take on perhaps 2 to 3 additional countries to the 7 that we have already reached out to. So all countries that participate in step 2, phase 1, will be supported by the GNC to develop emergency response plans, preparedness plans, using the newly developed GNC guidance and online tools. After completion, all countries that participate in step 2, phase 1 will be invited to participate in a lessons learned or review workshop to review and update the guidance and online tools. And lastly, we have step 3. So step 3 consists of the second phase of the GNC ERP rollout plan and includes all countries with active or with an active HPC, as well as other countries identified by the GNC as high risk. So that's pretty much every country which is represented on today's webinar. So everyone that has joined today's webinar. All countries included in step 3 will receive GNC support to develop ERP plans. And step 3 also includes the global level mapping of ERP related outputs, ongoing monitoring and updating of plans based on changing contexts. So the following set of slides will focus on the ERP approach exercise at a country level and the respective steps required to complete the exercise. Just to reflect back on the previous slide, these are the steps which will be undertaken by countries both in phase 1 and phase 2 of the ERP exercise rollout plan, which corresponds to step 2 and step 3 of the global ERP approach process outline. This slide illustrates the various steps and outputs of the ERP approach at a country level. And as you can see, at a country level, there are 4 main steps to the exercise, with each step resulting in an output. So these outputs are then uploaded to the GNC ERP platform for country level preparedness dashboards, mapping of preparedness actions at a global level, and also the generation of ERP plans, which can be then saved, printed, and shared at a country level as needed, similar to the automatically generated reports from the CCPM exercise. In addition, there's also the required planning and decision-making on the implementation process. And again, like the CCPM exercise, the GNC is here to support you with the planning and decision-making process. So we will now walk through each step and discuss in more detail. So the very first step of the ERP exercise, and as mentioned by Margaret, is the risk analysis, and this is to identify the humanitarian risks. The purpose of the risk analysis and ranking is to identify potential hazards and to rank these in terms of risk from low to high. So risks identified as medium and high will require action under step 2 of the ERP approach, which is the contingency planning. This step also underpins step 3 of the ERP approach, which is to identify and implement preparedness actions. So this aligns with the decision-making step in the diagram presented on the right-hand side of the slide. Prior to starting this step, we do recommend that you first identify whether a risk analysis has already been completed at an intercluster level or by UNICEF or another actor. If so, you can use the already completed risk analysis for this exercise. If, however, the step has not been completed, you will need to complete this step within your respective nutrition coordination mechanism, usually through a workshop-style approach. Once risks are identified and ranked, outputs are then uploaded into the GNC online ERP platform. So in terms of how to complete this step, if it has not been completed already, well, first we need to identify potential hazards that may affect the country or context. So these fall within 6 IASC hazard categories, which have potential humanitarian consequences. And these are listed on the left-hand side of this slide. For example, under the natural hazards category, you may identify hazards such as flooding, drought, and earthquake. Under environmental hazards, you may identify hazards such as serious pollution, which in turn could affect ability to work outside the house, a potential loss of income, and subsequent increase in malnutrition. Once all of the hazards have been identified, we come to the risk ranking. Each hazard is ranked twice on a scale of 1 to 5, once to reflect their perceived impact and once for the likelihood of occurrence. So these scores are then to be inserted into the online GNC ERP tool, which will automatically calculate a ranking and a rating gravity from low to high risk. So for steps 1.3 to 1.5 of the risk analysis, so this is quite straightforward. For steps 1.3, the risk analysis, in the online tool, you will be required to insert a short description for each identified hazard. This is the qualitative information required to support the risk ranking of each hazard. And for step 1.4, the risk monitoring, so clusters and sectors are required to monitor risks on a continual basis. This is because contexts change and vulnerabilities may either deepen or lessen. If this exercise was completed at an interagency level, then OCHA may monitor the risks. If conducted by your respective coordination mechanism, however, then you may wish to revisit the risks and risks scores on a periodic basis. For step 1.5, decision making, so this ideally for every risk ranked medium to high risk, a contingency plan should be developed. And risks identified as medium and high risk should be discussed with partners and agreed on in terms of whether it should be considered for contingency planning. So this slide here shares examples of both the online tool, which you will upload your risk analysis inputs to, as well as the automatically generated risk graph, which is on the dashboard linked to the online tool. We won't go into the details of the online tool or dashboard yet, as Magnat will walk you through these at the end of the section, at the end of this section of the webinar. So we have now come to step 2 of the ERP approach, and this is the contingency planning. So as discussed earlier, for each risk identified as medium and above, theoretically, a contingency plan is required. However, it is only a recommendation that all medium and high risks, you develop a contingency plan, and you have the flexibility to decide on this at a cluster sector level. Keep in mind, however, that if you decide a contingency plan is not needed for a medium or high risk, you may wish to revisit the risk ranking process and re-rank your hazards. So what exactly is contingency planning? In its simplest terms, for nutrition clusters or sectors, it is a snapshot of nutrition cluster, inclusive of partners, capacity and approach to meeting the immediate needs of affected communities during the first 4 to 6 weeks of an emergency. This step is usually completed through a workshop with nutrition cluster sector partners, and for each of the agreed upon medium and high risks, you will be required to consider the sub-bullet points listed on this slide. That said, you don't need to discuss all of the sub-bullet points during the workshop. Some can be discussed prior or even after the workshop, and some can be completed directly by the Nutrition Cluster Coordinator or IMO if you already have this information at hand. So good news, while this may look quite labour intensive or process driven, at a GNC level, we have attempted to simplify the process through the online GNC ERP tool. The online tool will help you focus on the content needed for your respective contingency plans. You may wish to review the online tool during your workshop planning so that you are familiar with the type of content required. And this here is an example of the dashboard, which will illustrate the inputs uploaded into the online GNC ERP tool. Just to flag, however, these are just the beta versions of the dashboard, and this will likely change as we do receive inputs from those using the online tool and the dashboard as well. So we have now come to step 3 of the ERP process at a country level, and this is the preparedness actions. So step 3 refers to the review and selection of various preparedness actions and the development of a work plan. So as raised by Margaret, preparedness actions are a set of activities that must be implemented in order to establish a minimum level of emergency response readiness within a country. While technically there are minimum and advanced preparedness actions, this divide is not really relevant to GNC cluster sector countries, as all countries supported by the GNC are identified as high risk to emergencies, medium or high risk to emergencies. Preparedness actions will ensure readiness to respond to specific risks and are linked to the contingency plans and developed in the previous step of the ERP process. In summary, based on the gaps identified during the contingency planning process and from the list of GNC preparedness actions, a selection of preparedness actions are prioritised by the nutrition cluster or sector. And for these preparedness actions, as well as other preparedness actions, specific actions are identified as well as a lead for each of the actions. This ultimately results in the development of a preparedness actions work plan. For this step, the GNC will share an offline template for the development of this work plan. And like the other steps, the completion of this work plan is to be done in a workshop setting, and inputs are to then be uploaded to the GNC ERP online tool. So there is good news to supplement the preparedness actions work plan template. The GNC has the guidance document, so that's on the right of this slide. This guidance document lists all GNC preparedness actions and has detailed information on each of them in terms of what the action is and how it can be achieved or reached. For this step, you simply need to select the preparedness actions from this guidance document, prioritize and address within the work plan. So this is an example of the template to be used for the preparedness actions work plan. This offline tool can be completed in a workshop setting similar to that of the action plan for the CCPM exercise, so it is quite similar. Like the other steps, inputs provided can then be uploaded into the GNC online tool. The column on the right, the very right-hand side here, reflects the corresponding guidance in the GNC guidance document shared in the earlier slide. So we have now come to step 4 of the ERP process at a country level, and this is the monitoring and analysis. This step is quite straightforward and refers to the ongoing monitoring of both vulnerabilities, which may subsequently affect the risks for contingency planning, and also monitoring of the Preparedness Actions work plan and progress against this work plan in terms of meeting the various activities. So as shared throughout the webinar, there are 2 guidance documents to support you from steps 1 to 4. So we have the document on the left-hand side here. So this is a screenshot of the 2015 guidance, which is currently being updated. And as mentioned by Magwet, this should be finalized shortly, and we'll share the updated version with you once we have received it. And then on the right-hand side, we do have the GNC guidance document as well. I'll hand over to Magnat, and Magnat will take us through the online tools. So over to you, Magnat. Thank you.
Thank you, Brioni. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So as Brioni and Margaret said, so we have online tools. I'll just show you like the first one, which is for data collection. So this is what the countries will be filling in. And from here, we can have, the data display on the dashboard. So I'll not go through this because this is still work in progress, and we'll have time to finalize and share with you. We also have on the GNC website, this is where like the dashboard will be available and will be embedded here. So we still have other information that we'll put here, and this will be shared with the countries. And for just a few minutes, let me just show you the dashboard. And first of all, like this dashboard is designed using Power BI. And as I say, will be embedded into the GNC website. So here we have the country, and you can select the country. And the country, like the selection is synchronized across all the pages on this dashboard. So if I move like to risk analysis, we still have information related to Ethiopia. Same like if I go to contingency planning or preparedness actions. So the dashboard is exactly the same like as my colleague mentioned. I'll not go into detail. So here we just added this page here for the overview and just to describe the country situation, and can be in 1 or 2 pages. We'll see like when we receive the online tool for data collection, even the offline template. So we have the country here, and for risk analysis, Brioni mentioned about the score for the impact and likelihood. So here we can see we have the score, and the score, this is also here directly on this table. So it's calculated automatically. And we have the category, and for each category, you have like a different hazard. And the risk analysis that Brioni mentioned, so we have the description here. And as I said, like this is still ongoing. We're still working on it and to see how we can improve. And the risk level, so from low to high, we have also medium. And from this page, all medium and high risk. So we have step-by-step contingency planning. And this Brioni mentioned about this. I'm not going to go into details. So coming back to risk analysis, when we select the country, so if I go to Myanmar, so we can see like what are the risks identified. And for each each hazard, so we have the score. and we have the description that will happen appear here. Same as I moved to another country, so it changed depending on the information that was collected. And just to end this part, so to preparedness actions. So we saw the work plan, and here, so we have different functions, the status, and if the guidance here. So we'll like if the information is collected from the country, so the summary will appear here. And again, this will be for each country that will be changing depending on the selection that we apply. So just briefly, I think this is about the tools. The data collection that you'll be using Kobo web form. That the information will be, even the dashboard will be embedded on the GNC website, and we have like the dashboard, and we are still working to see like at the end, so each country can be able to download the country page information, and that can be used at the country level. Over. Yeah. Over to you, Brioni. Yeah.
Thanks, Magnet. So I just need to wait. Here we go. For the screen sharing, just one moment.
Brioni, before we move to the next step, maybe can we take a couple of questions if anyone has? I know we have a question and answer session at the end, but I thought it would be good before we finish this, the conceptual aspect, to have Q&A, and then we go to the next steps.
Sure, great idea, Antonio.
Yeah. Any question, any burning question, any question you have, you may ask now. We can take a couple of minutes.
Yes, Antonio?
Yes. Admire, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm interested in the dashboard, just to see. I just want to see the difference between the dashboard on contingency planning and the response action. I didn't quite get how different those two will be. Maybe can you just project and maybe briefly explain the difference between those two dashboards? I didn't quite get that one.
So Magnat will do that. Let us, while we are taking other questions, Magnat, you can show on the screen. Is there any other question? Any additional question?
This is Jacinta. I'm just wondering, is there a way of exporting from other areas? I know UNICEF have the online version already. Is there a way of exporting from one platform to another? Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me just collect more questions and we can respond.
This is Isaac.
Isaac, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one point related to the hazards. I understand that at a national level, of course, we have just done the HNO and the hazards have been clearly, identified. But the issue is that hub level, for example, if we're doing our preparedness, emergency response preparedness plan at the hub level, if there is any kind of difference between the hazards which are generally maybe agreed at national level, would there be any kind of contradiction, or when it goes at a lower level, it has to reflect what is happening there? Over.
Thanks, Isaac. Perhaps one more question, and we go to a very quick response. Okay, then, so for the first question from Admire, Magnat, can you just go over the template to explain the difference between the preparedness actions and the contingency plan. I think what Admire's question was, what is the difference on the online template?
Yeah, thank you, Antene, and colleagues can add, especially Brioni mentioned through the slide. So for the contingency planning here, so once the risk from medium to high identify here, so we have step by step here, like a different step where we get that information, and then we, I mean, the information first of all collect through this web form, the Kobo, and that will be displayed here directly. And for each hazard, so we have the geographic area, and then we have the affected population and population in need. And so from these steps, we have also the response operation capacity, and this is for the overall hazard identify. And the next one, like we have the gaps, constraint, and response strategies. And so far we put these two together, contingency plan 1 and 2, because we are still working on it to see how we better visualize this part. So we have like another step going to operation delivery. So we have operation support arrangement, coordination and management arrangement, even the funding requirement. So all these together are contingency plans 1 and 2 are together because this is still ongoing. So now the preparedness actions. So we have the work plan, and here we have like preparedness actions, and for each one we have like the status. And once data is be collected, so we can have like the date for each action, and who will be the lead, the action taken. So, and this will be across all the country depending on how the information is being collected. I can leave to Brioni if Brioni can add more information on this. Yeah.
Thanks, Magnet. I think that you answered the question quite well. Just to clarify that the contingency planning is for medium and high risks, whereas the preparedness actions are preparedness actions that might be prioritized for the contingency planning process, but they also reflect the risk analysis in the very first element of the ERP as well. So it is a separate standalone element of the ERP, as it is related to both the risk analysis and the contingency planning process, but not solely linked to the contingency planning process. So yes, some of the preparedness actions may be linked to various risks under the contingency planning, but others will be linked to the risk analysis element of the ERP. So that's why it's a third element in the overall process. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Brioni. Just to add, maybe to respond to the other questions, you may also would like to add, in addition to my response. Jacinta asked whether this template can be exported in some form, or will the form be available offline? The answer is yes. We can. The process is all the same, whether you do it offline or online. In any case, there is support which will be available for each country, so we can guide you through each step of the process, but we highly recommend the use of the online platform because it simplifies the process, and also, part of the main reason that most countries do not routinely do the emergency response preparedness is because the process is cumbersome, the guidance is not very clear, and the steps are sometimes confusing. So we hope the online system will address, but more clarification to come on a one-on-one basis. So we will, but both options are available, and the online can be exported to offline. And finally, to a question from Isaac, he raised about whether this tool can be used at subnational level, at hub level, in case of Yemen, where they have at least more than 3-4 hubs. The answer is yes, but here we are trying to put more than national one. But if you want to do by zone or by subnational level, it's up to the country. And as I said, this tool system hasn't yet been finalized. This is the first version of it. And if you have a specific need for having it for subnational level, I think this is something we can discuss with you at a later stage. So that's it. And the other question in the chat box is regarding whether each country will have a page or not. The answer is again yes, so long as you commit to join the process and put a preparedness, emergency response preparedness mechanism in your country. Yes, we can create a page. So I think, Brioni, I hand it over to you to quickly go through the next steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Antene. So I'll just reopen the slide. Just one moment, it's just uploading. Okay. So here we go. So we've just now come to the section of the webinar, which is on the next steps. Because of time, I'll just go through this quite quickly. So in terms of next steps, so these are the steps that will take place after today's webinar, and these correspond to step 2 of our global ERP process outline. So as discussed earlier in the webinar, we will first roll out to 7 large-scale emergency countries. So these countries have already been contacted by the GNC, and there has been a bilateral communication. Though in summary, these countries include DRC, Yemen, South Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Afghanistan. And as just mentioned earlier, if there are other countries that would like to join phase 1 of the rollout plan, you're most welcome to express your interest. So for all countries in the phase 1 of the rollout plan, we will start the process with bilateral country support calls to discuss the planning and decision making for each step. And countries are then required to conduct each of the steps that we have discussed during the presentation, and then to upload into the online tool. Regarding the tool, so it is still a work in progress, and the GNC will provide you with ongoing support with the use of that tool as well. In terms of the support provided by the GNC, so it'll be myself for the English and Spanish speaking countries, and then Caroline and Angeline will support the French speaking countries. And then in terms of next steps as well, we will share a follow-up email following this webinar, which will include some key resources and guidelines. Also a recording of this webinar for those that were unable to join the call, and we'll also just discuss the process outline that we presented earlier in the presentation in a little bit more detail to provide you with support. So I think that's it at this end. So I'll just hand over back to Antene if there are additional questions that anyone would like to raise. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Brioni. This is also an opportunity to ask a question. If you still have a question, we could take a couple of minutes for additional questions if you have. In the meantime, I just want to say that whatever discussed here and what we plan to do is in order to facilitate this process. In any way, we are not suggesting that we don't want to dictate how you work, but this is just offering you an option, a better tools and guidance to make the process much easier and to provide a clear guidance on the process. So it's up to each country to decide whether or not such mechanism is required. Of course, the answer is yes. Every single country, either sector or cluster coordination mechanism in place need to have a preparedness, because preparedness mechanism is also part of the humanitarian programming cycle. So it's a compulsory exercise, it's not optional. But in terms of the approach, whether offline, online, GNC supported, or by yourself, it's up to your decision. But we are available to support you in the process. During the initial phase, as mentioned by Brioni, we will be working mainly with large-scale emergencies. We already identified 7 countries. We already reached out to them. If any one of the countries participating here would like to join, we could take about 3 countries during this phase. But subsequently, we will be doing the support to all countries, at least the high and the medium risk countries, which GNC is currently supporting. So I think that's all, unless anyone has any final point. And Shabib is sending you the registration link at the chat box. Please register so that we know who participated, and also your individual roles for reporting and documenting purposes. I guess we can end the webinar unless there is final question or final point from my colleagues. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope it was very helpful. And this is not the end. This is just the beginning. Our support, as usual, is available, and we will reach out to the countries in the first phase in the coming weeks or so. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you also the facilitators for really a very articulate presentation you did today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.